Welcome to Warfare Codex. If you enjoy fascinating and unusual history, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more incredible stories. Now, let's dive into the strange and extraordinary world of history's most unique individuals. World War II, which lasted from 1939 to 1945, was not only the most destructive war in history, but also one of the most transformative periods in human history. The war reshaped the political, social, and economic landscape of the world, resulting in the death of tens of millions of people and the destruction of entire cities. It was a conflict that spanned the globe, involving countries across Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. The war's origins can be traced back to the complex political landscape of the early 20th century. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919 to officially end World War I, left deep scars in Europe. The harsh reparations imposed on Germany created a sense of resentment that was later exploited by Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. Hitler's ambitions for territorial expansion, coupled with the rise of fascism and totalitarian regimes in Italy and Japan, set the stage for a second, even more devastating war. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland, marking the official start of World War II. This invasion was quickly followed by Britain and France declaring war on Germany, beginning the European conflict. The world was soon engulfed in a conflict that would involve more than 100 million people from over 30 countries. The rapid pace at which the war spread can be attributed to the military strategies employed, including Germany's Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War. This tactic combined fast-moving tanks, infantry, and airstrikes, allowing German forces to quickly overwhelm Poland and then continue their push through Europe. In the first few years of the war, Germany achieved remarkable success. By 1940, much of Western Europe had fallen under Nazi control. France, which had been one of the leading military powers in Europe, was defeated in a matter of weeks, leading to its occupation by Germany. In the summer of 1940, Germany turned its attention to Britain, launching a relentless bombing campaign known as the Battle of Britain. The German Luftwaffe attacked British cities, hoping to break the morale of the British people and force the United Kingdom to surrender. However, the Royal Air Force, with the help of radar technology, successfully fended off the German air assault. The bravery of British pilots during this battle became legendary, and the defense of Britain was a key turning point in the war. While the war raged on in Europe, the conflict also spread to other parts of the world. On the Eastern Front, the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany faced off in one of the largest and most brutal theaters of the war. In June 1941, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. The campaign initially made significant advances, but the harsh Russian winter, combined with fierce Soviet resistance, eventually led to a German retreat. One of the most devastating battles of the war occurred at Stalingrad, where German and Soviet forces engaged in a brutal, months-long battle. The battle ended with the encirclement and eventual surrender of the German Sixth Army, marking the beginning of a long Soviet offensive that would eventually push Germany out of Eastern Europe. As the war progressed, the Allies, which included the United States, Britain, the Soviet Union, and others, began to make headway against the Axis powers. The United States, initially neutral, was drawn into the conflict after Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. This attack led to the United States declaring war on Japan, and shortly after, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States. With its vast industrial capacity and manpower, the United States became a critical part of the Allied war effort, providing essential supplies, soldiers, and resources to the fight. The Pacific theater of the war was defined by brutal island-hopping campaigns between Japan and the United States. Major battles like Midway, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa were characterized by fierce fighting, with heavy casualties on both sides. In the Pacific, Japan sought to expand its empire across Asia and the Pacific Islands, and the Allies had to push back, island by island, to halt Japan's advance. The Battle of Midway, in particular, was a pivotal naval battle that turned the tide in favor of the Allies. The United States managed to sink 4 Japanese aircraft carriers, crippling Japan's naval strength and shifting the balance of power in the Pacific. Meanwhile, back in Europe, the Allies were preparing for a massive invasion of France. This would come on June 6, 1944, known as D-Day, when American, British, and Canadian forces stormed the beaches of Normandy. The invasion marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. The Allies slowly advanced through France, liberating cities and pushing German forces back toward Germany itself. As the Allies closed in, Germany was in disarray. Hitler's plans had failed, and the Third Reich was crumbling under the weight of the Allied assault. On the home front, the war had a profound effect on civilian life. Rationing, bombings, and the constant fear of invasion became part of daily life for millions. Cities like London, Berlin, and Tokyo were heavily bombed, resulting in massive destruction and loss of life. Civilians were often caught in the crossfire, and the war's toll on non-combatants was just as devastating as the military conflict itself. The rise of propaganda in both Axis and Allied nations also played a significant role in shaping public opinion, as governments sought to control the narrative and maintain morale. Perhaps the most horrific aspect of the war was the Holocaust. The Nazi regime, under Adolf Hitler, targeted Jews, Roma people, disabled individuals, and other minority groups for extermination. The systematic killing of 6 million Jews, along with millions of others, in concentration camps across Europe, remains one of the most barbaric genocides in history. The photographs and stories from the concentration camps serve as a grim reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the consequences of unchecked hatred and bigotry. The war's toll on human lives and its devastating consequences are almost unimaginable. But even in the darkest hours, moments of heroism and courage stood out. The bravery of soldiers, the resilience of civilians, and the leadership of figures like Winston Churchill and Franklin D. Roosevelt helped guide the Allies to victory. As the war continued, the Allies were determined not only to defeat the Axis powers, but also to prevent future wars through cooperation and diplomacy. As the war entered its final stages, the Allied forces continued to push forward on all fronts. In Europe, the liberation of France was a critical turning point. The success of the D-Day invasion marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. Over the following months, the Allies advanced through France and Belgium, eventually liberating countries occupied by the Nazis. The fighting was intense, with cities and villages being destroyed in the process. As the Allies closed in on Germany from the west, Soviet forces were advancing from the east, creating a two-front assault that the Germans could not withstand. In April 1945, the Soviet Union captured Berlin, the heart of Nazi Germany. Adolf Hitler, realizing that the war was lost, committed suicide in his underground bunker in the Reichstag, the German parliament building. His death marked the effective end of the Nazi regime. On May 7, 1945, Germany officially surrendered to the Allied forces, a moment that was celebrated across the world as Victory in Europe Day, or VE Day. But while Europe was rejoicing, the war in the Pacific was far from over. The United States, after a string of victories in the Pacific, was preparing for a final push to defeat Japan. The strategy involved a series of brutal island-hopping campaigns where Allied forces would capture strategic islands in the Pacific Ocean and use them as bases for further assaults. However, Japan's determination to fight until the bitter end made this campaign extremely costly. The Battle of Iwo Jima, for instance, became infamous for its intense fighting and the famous photograph of Marines raising the American flag on Mount Suribachi. Thousands of lives were lost on both sides, and the Japanese forces showed no signs of surrendering. In response to Japan's refusal to surrender, the United States made a controversial decision to use nuclear weapons. On August 6, 1945, the city of Hiroshima was bombed with the first atomic bomb. 3 days later, a second bomb was dropped on the city of Nagasaki. The immediate devastation caused by these bombs was catastrophic, killing tens of thousands of people instantly and causing long-term suffering due to radiation exposure. The use of atomic bombs on Japan remains one of the most debated decisions in modern history, but it ultimately led to Japan's surrender on August 15, 1945. The formal surrender ceremony took place on September 2, 1945, aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, bringing an official end to World War II. The consequences of World War II were far-reaching. In Europe, the devastation was immense. Entire cities had been reduced to rubble, and millions of people were displaced. The war left Europe deeply divided, and the competition between the United States and the Soviet Union over influence in the post-war world would lead to the Cold War, a period of intense geopolitical tension that lasted for nearly half a century. Germany was divided into 4 occupation zones, controlled by the United States, the Soviet Union, Britain, and France. Eventually, the division of Germany would lead to the creation of 2 separate German states: West Germany, aligned with the West, and East Germany, controlled by the Soviet Union. The war also brought significant social changes. Women, who had entered the workforce in large numbers during the war, would find themselves fighting for the right to maintain those positions in the post-war world. The role of women in society was forever changed, as the war had proven their ability to contribute to the workforce and the war effort. In addition, the war's racial tensions, especially in the United States, would lead to the Civil Rights Movement, which would gain momentum in the 1950s and 1960s. In Asia, the end of the war saw the dismantling of Japan's empire. Colonies in the Pacific, Southeast Asia, and China were freed from Japanese control, but the power vacuum left by Japan's defeat led to new conflicts, such as the Chinese Civil War, which would ultimately result in the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949. The United States also took on a leading role in the rebuilding of Japan, helping to transform it into an economic powerhouse in the decades that followed. Perhaps the most significant consequence of the war was the establishment of the United Nations in 1945. The UN was created with the goal of preventing future conflicts on the scale of World War II. While it has not been perfect, it remains a vital forum for diplomacy and peacekeeping efforts around the world. The horrors of the Holocaust and the war's other atrocities served as a powerful reminder of the need for international cooperation, human rights protections, and the prevention of genocide. Looking back, World War II serves as a stark reminder of the devastating power of war, but it also shows the resilience of humanity. Despite the unimaginable suffering, the war led to significant advancements in technology, medicine, and global cooperation. The lessons learned from the war continue to shape modern geopolitics and the collective memory of humanity. The photographs and footage we have of the war, From soldiers in the trenches to civilians enduring bombings and the liberation of concentration camps, serve as a testimony to the courage and strength of those who lived through it. The final victory, however, came not just in the defeat of the Axis powers, but in the rebuilding of the world. The peace that followed, though fragile, allowed for the creation of institutions like the European Union, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the International Monetary Fund, all designed to promote cooperation and prevent future global conflicts. Yet, despite these efforts, the lessons of the war remind us that peace is never guaranteed, and the importance of diplomacy, empathy, and cooperation between nations cannot be overstated. The memory of World War II remains embedded in our global consciousness, a reminder of both the worst and best of humanity. It is a reminder that even in the darkest times, there are stories of heroism, sacrifice, and hope. From the soldiers who fought on the front lines to the civilians who endured unimaginable hardships, the war shaped the world in ways that continue to resonate today. As we reflect on the past, we must never forget the cost of freedom, the importance of peace, and the ongoing need to stand against tyranny in all its forms. Thanks for watching Warfare Codex. If you enjoyed this journey into history's strangest figures, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more amazing stories. See you in the next one.